Welcome to another edition of Football Update with, Andy and Robin. This is Andy.
And this is Robin.
Sorry about the guys. Had a little bit of a tongue twister today.
Mm-hmm.
Today we were just going to talk about the playoff race, and the percentages, things like that, and the team's chances. But then some big stuff happened on Thursday night. So Robin, a big game Thursday, which we did not expect, and some big thing finally happened.
Yeah, so the Raiders down Josh Jacobs and down their left tackle Colton Miller against the Chargers down to Easton Stick quarterback with Justin Herbert out for the year. Keenan Allen not there either, so both teams kind of down a few guys, but it was a bloodbath in favor of the Raiders. At one point, 63-7 after Jack Jones one-handed a screen pass for an interception and took it back for a pick six. And the Spanos family, which is, some would say frugal, others would say cheap, people would have assumed, they'll probably let it last the season. And the next morning, around 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern time, Brandon Staley and GM Tom Telesco let go, and it just feels like kind of a waste of the first 4 years of Justin Herbert's career, and he's about to enter the last year of his rookie contract, and after that rookie contract, he has the record extension, and it's an interesting position for the Chargers to be in, even with that great quarterback, and whoever comes in as GM and coach does have that talented quarterback that can make up a few things that we saw Thursday night. That team just didn't look like it could compete with anybody, and it kind of made, some of the issues that Justin Herbert has, maybe be like, that those might be more LA Charger issues. But I don't know. Was there anything more that you took from both that game and the Chargers situation as a whole?
Well, I think next to McDaniels, he's just been the worst coach. Like, he is terrible at, time management and making calls as a head coach. And just, he was touted as his defensive guru. And just, there were so many games that, because even this year that Herbert put up phenomenal points. Yeah. And it's just they lost these these high scoring games. And then you go back a few years ago, I think it was 2021, where they got the ball back. The Raiders were, his last game of the season, the Raiders were going to make it go to overtime, or make it be a tie, so they would both get both get in, but he calls a timeout.
Yeah.
It's just there's that. Then last year he lost, they were up 27-0 against the Jaguars. Yeah. So it just seems like finally coming, and he never really owned up to his his issues. Even that night before he got fired, He's like, no, I think I'll still be the coach here. No, I don't see me. It's like, dude, I would love to have that, ignorance. The only thing I feel bad for is the GM. The GM has done, with the exception of one or two things, the GM has done a phenomenal job. The people he's drafted, the people he's traded, on paper, they should have one of the best defenses in the league, So it's going to be interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if, we've been hearing that Belichick's probably going to be traded, they're smart enough not to fire Belichick because they can get some value out of him. I think that would be a perfect spot for Belichick to go,
Yeah, a lot of what you said I do agree with. I think the one thing at the end of the Staley press conference was, I think they asked him straight up, do you think he'll be the coach tomorrow? And he said, I don't know. And I think there was also the thing he said, I'm trying to think what he said. He was more about, I think I know what we've done here over 3 years. And it's And it was mediocre record with as talented quarterback as you have. The GM, I think, like you said, he's done some really great things, some really good picks, including Keenan Allen and Rashawn Slater, all these guys. But there's going to be some moves from this past offseason. You go, if you do something different, last couple of off seasons, where if you do something different, the J.C. Jackson move, it turned out so bad that they, basically traded him for, a swap of late picks in 2025, kind of the ham sandwich trade. And he even apologized to the DB room over how bad that move is. And it's a move that costs them not only the rest of this year, but next year, because he has the dead cap that you have to worry about with how much guaranteed money. The Quinn Johnston drafting, where, he's a raw player and it might take him to year 2 or 3 with his talent to be up there, but he's just cost them in so many big games with drops. And you look at what Jordan Addison's done this season, even today, and then what Zay Flowers has done, and you're like, if you pick one of those two guys, and those guys can step in when Mike Williams unfortunately gets hurt, maybe you have someone there, and then they invested into Kenneth Murray at linebacker a few years ago in the draft in the first round. That hasn't worked out great. Joey Bosa, he's played like an elite player who's been on the field, but he's been hurt a bunch. He's got the big contract. Same with Khalil Mack. So there's big contracts and no way to really restructure to get under the cap. So we could be looking at somewhat of a big exodus of those big names and big contracts like Bosa, Mack, Mike Williams. But you have that quarterback. You have theoretically a pretty great left tackle. So that's a great starting point. The head coaching candidates, other than Belichick, there's Jim Harbaugh at Michigan. He could be interesting. Dan Quinn could be that culture guy that has head coaching experience, but you really want somebody that can get the most out of Justin Herbert and those pieces, and also be able to identify at the GM spot someone that can get some bargains now that big Herbert contract is coming up. But should say the Raiders, great job in that game with Antonio Pierce coming off the shutout. Connell played really well. They executed really well. Do you take much of it from it, though? Because it was such a weird game where it looked like the Chargers after a certain point just failed to compete. Like even the return touchdown on the fumble by Jenkins, there was like no one in sight to try and tackle the big defensive tackle on that fumble return.
That was when I was just looking at the scores of the game, I was just amazed that the offense scored that many points. But man, props to that Raiders defense,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I will say it didn't surprise me that the Raiders did that good, just because it seems like they're really fighting.
Yeah.
They really seem to like their new coach, and just people were questioning if he might be let go after this season because of the stinker the previous week. But, this might have just saved his job.
Yeah, absolutely. And now we're going to get into the playoff race, which changed a little bit ago with the result of the Bengals-Vikings game. But in the AFC, it was 6 teams tied at 7-6. The Houston Texans, Denver Broncos, Cincinnati Bengals, Pittsburgh Steelers, Indianapolis Colts, and Buffalo Bills. And, they're all competing for that, 7 spot, 6 and 7 spots. The AFC as a whole, there's just, a bunch of teams, even with backup quarterbacks, still competing. What do you make of the entire setup, and who do you think separates at this point?
Honestly, it's tough for me because there's all these. I just don't see this one team in the AFC right now cut above the rest. The Ravens are kind of like that, but at the same time they have those games that are like real head scratchers. The Dolphins right now are at number 2. They kind of have 97% chance of making the playoffs, but they. I don't know what that I went to bed thinking, okay, the Titans lost. Yeah. The Dolphins are in danger of possibly even still losing the division to the Bills. When we get to the Bills, we'll talk about that a bit more, depending on how their schedule goes. The Chiefs really are showing their issues on offense, and then the Jaguars, excuse me, I know Trevor Lawrence is injured, but that, that's why he had a rough game, but, like, it just feels like even someone in the 7th seed might be able to win this thing, possibly. The Browns seem to be having the best offense under Joe Flacco. I mean, you saw that. So right now, the Browns are at the 5th seed. I didn't see the standings yet. Now the Bengals, which was not good for the Bills, have won today against the Vikings, which was really frustrating because I was watching the last half of that game, and the Vikings kept running the same defense plays to me, or very similar soft kind of coverages. But are the Bengals now the 6th or 7th seed?
I'm pulling up right now. In that game, practically it was 2 3/4 games where they hadn't allowed a touchdown, the Vikings defense. And, Brian Flores has done an incredible job throughout the year. But for a reason, Jake Browning was able to figure it out. Right now, they are at the 6th seed. Right now.
Okay, and that's funny because the Colts and Steelers are playing today. So, based on today, and the Bengals winning, unless the Broncos or Texans win tomorrow, that's going to be the seeding for this week. Because the Bills lost the Bengals, and we're statistically lower. So It's funny how each week is going. So, I mean, the Bengals still have a tough schedule ahead. I think they're playing the Chiefs still, Steelers, and the Browns, I think, if I remember correctly. So, I think all with the exception of the Browns, since they are comfortably ahead, not super comfortably, mind you, but like at least one game ahead, and the Ravens are ahead, I think that might be one of the teams that might not make it in is the North. And then the Colts are playing the Steelers tonight. So that, like I said, that's originally no one thought a Steelers-Colts game this late in the year would be this important. But it's just that's what I love about the end of the year football.
Oh yeah.
Texans. They got the injury to C.J. Stroud.
Yeah. And he's not going to play tomorrow against the Titans. Will Anderson not either. Nico Collins questionable, and they've had a bunch of injuries the past 2 or 3 weeks. Dalton Schultz and Tank Dell's the huge one.
Yeah, and then tonight, hopefully the Lions can take care of business with the Broncos. So it feels like another week that's for the Bills where there's some things going right and some things that aren't. So it's just tomorrow is going to be the Bills' toughest game for the rest of the season, in my opinion. Because you're playing the Chargers without Herbert, and they're going to be in transitional. So it's going to be very close.
Yeah.
I don't think the Bills will be dead if we lose tomorrow, but it's going to be a fair bit harder. But, right now, I say the Bills making it is 50-50, and surprisingly, the only team that I can comfortably say in the wild card round is the Browns, just because each team is so close now, So it's just like we said, the Bengals are going to have some very tough games coming up, so nothing's confirmed. So are the Colts. They're playing the Steelers. So I might be crazy. I actually still think that the Bills might win the division, just depending on who the Dolphins are, how the Dolphins play. Just because the Bills, for the most part, in my opinion, beat themselves most of those games and lost, whereas the Dolphins just cannot really hold themselves against a good team. And as we saw last week, the Jets are playing kind of with a chip on our shoulders. That I would not give that a guaranteed win. Tyreek Hill hasn't played at all this week. So, your thoughts on the AFC?
Yeah. So, as we're talking, I'm watching a bit of the Steelers Colts game, and I don't know what it is about QB sneaks today, but the Vikings. You saw a play with Nick Mullins. They tried 2 straight. QB sneaks in that game.
I just want to say quick. I don't know why they did not. It didn't work the first time. They didn't give it to the running back that was playing. That kid was playing phenomenal. Frustrated Bills fans here, guys.
Yep. So the one time the Bills need the Vikings to, do the QB sneak right, because last year, if you remember that very weird game where the Bills were up 17 and ended up losing, they had 4th and goal of the Vikings. They tried quarterback sneak. Kirk Cousins isn't able to get it. Next play is, okay, you snap it, you move the ball a little bit, game's over, and there's the bobble snap. And what do you know? The Bills need the Vikings this year to win against the Bengals, and they bobble snap on the quarterback sneak. And then I'm just watching this. Oh, never mind. They gave the Steelers the touchdown. So they did give him on a QB sneak, which was weird because it was like Trubisky fumbled, and then someone recovered it on a 4th and goal from the 1. But in theory, if you fumble, the advancing player, the guy who recovered, has to be the guy that fumbled it in the first place. But I think they're saying that Trubisky got it across. So the Steelers are up 7-0, if that's any update you guys want. And yeah, he barely got across and then popped out. So Najee picked it up and ran in. But I guess they just give it to Trubisky to begin with. So, but yeah, the whole overall, the AFC, I think it's like 11, 12 deep at this point with teams that can still do something. And NFC is similar, which we'll get to them, but there's better teams, or at least better records out of the AFC with all these teams competing. And they're all playing each other, within these last 2, 3, 4 weeks. So big thing is, on the Buffalo side, if you take care of business, you're getting into the playoff. You win a tough game against Dallas, and you win the, games the next 2 weeks. And then the Miami game's interesting, could be for the division. As you said, Miami, Connor Williams getting hurt on the O-line. That was a huge injury for them. I'm wondering if you've seen any Hard Knocks, because that was mentioned, and also a couple weeks earlier, when they played the Jets, they had they profiled Jalen Phillips, their top pass rusher, a lot, and it was the episode where they have him show the unfortunate Achilles injury, and best wishes for his recovery, but and that was brutal to watch, but Miami's, unfortunately, they've sustained a bunch of injuries on their end, so. And it's the big people, and Tyreek, as you said, could be, game time decision against the Jets team that has a great defense. And if Wilson can play like he did against Houston, that becomes an interesting game. Jacksonville, I think they have the easier schedule down the stretch. And plus, if Tennessee beats the Texans tomorrow, which is very possible, I think they're in a decent spot in their division, even if they were to lose to Baltimore, because they still have the tiebreak over Indianapolis because they've won twice, and then they have games against the Buccaneers, Panthers, and Titans to end the year. But the Christian Kirk injury is huge for them, regardless of whether they make it in or not. And
just looking at tomorrow, there's a lot of. It's just funny how many. Again, since there's so many teams on both conferences that are so neck and neck, because now you look at, I think we can both agree the top 5 spots in the NFC is set. The 49ers have clinched their division, and if one looks at this, since they already beat both the Eagles and Cowboys, I think it's safe to say they got the first seed, even though it's not 100% confirmed yet. The only interesting thing is the Cowboys-Eagles, because it just really depends on how both their season ends, because they each got to win on each other. Yeah. But right now, the Cowboys are ahead. Lions had a couple bad games, but I think they play really well pissed, and hopefully they do that tonight against the Broncos for the Bills.
Yeah.
And then, actually, I take that bet on the first 5 seeds being pretty convincing because, of course, first we got to talk about the NFC South. Just an up and down thing. Each team, not counting the Panthers, because they're the worst team in football, but each team has big issues on plays. You saw Derek Carr getting chewed out. He had an injured rib. I think something wrong with his shoulder. So I think it might be the Bucs at the end of the day. I just think they have the best weapons, and I'm really happy to say I think my prediction was like Mayfield has not been the main issue on their problem. Like he's in a few bad things, but he's been very consistent.
Yeah.
And the Falcons are such an up and down team. You just don't know what you're going to see with them. But fortunately for them, they're playing the Panthers, so that could help them in the race. And the Bucs right now are going to be playing a tough team, in my opinion. And the Packers, not just I'm only saying that because the Packers right now are, even though they lost last week, that with the the Vikings losing, that really helps them out right now. And they're playing in Lambeau, so they're going to play their hearts out. And also the Vikings losing, I really think, help out the Rams and Seahawks because I don't know, they're playing in Seattle, so it could be something, but the Eagles are playing Seattle on Monday night. So right now the Seahawks have a 20% chance. But I really think this helped the Rams. I would not be surprised if I'm calling it. And let me see what the Rams' schedule is for the rest of the season. Because I think they're done playing the 49ers. They went toe-to-toe with with one of the best teams in the league with the Ravens. So, I take that. Their last game is the 49ers. But, you beat the Commanders, Saints, and Giants the next 3 games. That could give you enough potential, excuse me. And, who knows, at that point, the 49ers might sit their players. So, what do you think about the NFC?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a tough battle between Dallas, Philly, and the Niners for that 1 seed. I think Philly might be the team that needs it the most because they've gotten waxed the past couple weeks against the Niners and the Cowboys. Even though they're 10-3, the way that they've played the last, 5 weeks, you could argue they could be on a 5-game losing streak if Valdez-Scantling gets a catch, if, a couple things when they play the Bills don't go their way, if, Dallas plays better in the red zone against them. There seems to be a lot of issues, and now to add on top of that, Darius Slay having knee surgery, which he should be back at some point at the end of the regular season, but until he comes back, they're a little weaker in the secondary. They do play at Seattle on Monday, and with an extra day of rest, that might help, but they're not playing up to their normal level. I do think that the thing with them is get the 1 seed, you're home against both Philly and Dallas. If they don't get it, I don't really love their chances as much as you would have last year. And, because Brock Purdy, there were some Eagles fans, not all of them, but a pretty decent amount of them that kind of talked, hey, if Brock Purdy were playing, wouldn't have made a huge difference. And I don't know, it looked like it made a pretty big difference in their matchup a couple weeks ago. So,
that really irks me too. I'm not trying to say he's be as good as Tom Brady, but I'm sure Brady got some of those comments when he first started playing. Because he was the backup. But what a year, for Purdy. The story of being Mr. Irrelevant. Yeah.
He's been huge for that. He's playing it quite as much, as good as pretty much any quarterback in the league. And Hurts, a little more turnover prone this year. Doesn't seem to trust the O-line. There's the Bootleg Football Podcast guys were talking about it, that he just seems to not trust his line as much. And when he's, normally he's setting up to throw the deep pass to either A.J. Brown or Devonta Smith, he's putting his eyes down because he knows the rush is coming, and that's taking away their big plays in the pass game. They're not running as well. You could argue they downgraded at the coordinator positions with Shane Steichen leaving and Jonathan Gann leaving, and them being replaced by Brian Johnson and Sean Desai. Now they have times, at the end of the season to kind of fix that, but that's not going too well. As you said, with the AFC South, it's possible you could get 2 teams, out of that division, the way there's so much 6 and 7 and even 5 and 8 teams are in the hunt. But out of those teams, I feel the least confident about New Orleans, just because it doesn't seem like there's much of a love affair between, as you were mentioning before, Derek Carr and his new set of teammates. He's gotten banged up a ton. They've been, injured with Olave, missing some practice time. Rashid Shaheed, now he's starting to get back, but, the defense isn't quite as great rushing the passer as you would have hoped. It had some great parts to start the year, but not as much down the stretch. Tampa, they haven't been anybody great since that 3-1 start, so I'm a little bit, although winning in Atlanta was huge for them. But, I have to see how they do against Green Bay and Jacksonville. And then Falcons, I agree. They're a little Jekyll and Hyde, but I know I'm going to get a great running team. I know I'm going to get a team that competes on the defensive end, can force turnovers. Jesse Bates has been huge for them. Drake London has played really great for them. If you just find a way to get the ball consistently to Pitts and London, get some great running game, and Desmond Ridder, please don't turn it over. I feel the best about them if those are the three things going on. But, that's not a guarantee. Dallas, I think, is playing about as good as anybody in the league right now. Dak is, last year was a bit of an outlier with all the interceptions. A bunch of them go off receivers' hands and everything. People were very critical. Us, I think somewhat us included, with the moving on from Kellen Moore to Mike McCarthy calling plays. And Mike McCarthy has done an incredible job getting the most out of Dak, getting the ball down the field. And in their matchup with the Bills, ever since, the London game with Buffalo, where Milano got hurt and Daquan Jones got hurt, the middle of the field is where their defense is weakest, and that's where, Dak Prescott throwing the ball down the seam to Jake Ferguson and CeeDee Lamb could really kill that. So Dallas does have a difficult down the stretch with Bills, Dolphins, Lions, and I believe that's the order. I think, that is the Bills, Dolphins, Lions, and then, at Commanders, which isn't too tough, but the way things are going. But, if they were to win out, they'd, feel like the best team, although you don't love them matching up with the Niners. But, yeah. And then NFC North is suddenly very interesting, because I think the Lions are very happy with the Bengals result today, because they were kind of sweating them, and the Packers maybe making a run, and then they're probably pretty happy about the Packers result on Monday night. So if they win tonight, they're pretty set to win that division, even though Goff, I think 10 turnovers in his last 4 games. They lose by double digits to the Bears. 2 or 3 weeks after they had barely beaten them, needed a miracle comeback to beat them. They don't look great on Thanksgiving against the Packers. They get beat up in that game. Barely beat the Saints after going up 21-0. Aleem McNeil at defensive tackle getting hurt when their defense has, missed 5 or 6 starts throughout the year. Him being out, puts so much more pressure on Aiden Hutchinson. And he's kind of fishing for sacks instead of, playing his plays, and that killed him a couple times against the Bears. So Vikings, Addison and Jefferson played incredible today. Mullins made some throws, but just so many, 2 crucial turnovers basically at or near the red zone. And Brian Flores' defense did what it could for 3 quarters before Zach Taylor kind of figured him out. And it just doesn't, I feel like they have it tough, because they have, their last 3 are Detroit, Green Bay, and Detroit. So, they're 3,
win today really,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that really should have been a game they should have won today, because that's a lot harder for them to know.
Yeah. And then Green Bay, they had a great streak of, I think they were like 3-5 at one point, getting to 6-6, and then have the rough one Monday night where, again, Joe Barry's defense can't get a stop late in the game, and it's against Tommy DeVito of all people, so, yeah, there's...
I'm sorry, Robin.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm looking at the standings now. Surprisingly, and again, that's because no teams have played yet. So right now, the Vikings are still at at the 6th seed.
6th seed, and I thought it would be interesting if they had won today. It would basically guarantee them the 6, which would have meant very good chance of it being Detroit, Minnesota, which would mean they'd play 3 times in a month, which would, but that's kind of thrown in flux. And as great a coaching job as Brian Flores did, for basically this whole season and up to the end of the game today, and then Kevin O'Connell has done, it may not be enough, but they have fared out a way. It's very odd how Dobbs was as great as he was, or at least winning as much as he was, and he was basically the emergency guy. Like, he was inactive. Like, if Mullins were pulled or got hurt, it would have gone to Jaron Hall very potentially. So the rookie at BYU. So they played 4 different quarterbacks this year, and we're this close to being 8-6 and having a good spot right now. Steelers up 13-0. So not sure if that's a bit of a shocker to me. I'm not gonna lie.
At this point, I kind of want the Steelers to win just because they're playing the Bengals next week.
Yeah.
In Pittsburgh. So at this point, it's kind of like, you know what? Let them get it, because if the Colts lose, I think they can beat the Bengals next week. Because we were mentioning the Bengals have a very tough schedule coming up. They got Steelers, like we said, next week. They got the Chiefs in Kansas City. And the Chiefs are going to be playing mad the next few weeks because of what happened.
Yeah.
And then they're playing at home against the Browns. And I think it's close, but like if they had a better quarterback, I would say the Browns had the best team in that division. Like that defense is just incredible.
Yeah.
But it'll be some very, very exciting football, but very frustrating football because it's just. You just really wish Bills had at least 1 or 2 more wins.
Yes, I know.
It's going to be like this for the rest of the season.
I did want to finish up with the NFC North just a little.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. And then another team that is still technically in the hunt, miraculously, Chicago. They're 5-4 since the 0-4 start. If they didn't blow the game against the first game against Detroit, they'd be one of those 6-7 teams. But I have Justin Fields is battling for his chance to still be the quarterback there next year, because they're going to get the number 1 pick from Carolina. And you'd think, Bears against the Browns, but this is the type of game they can win because Browns, it's in Cleveland, Browns are down their top 3 of their top 5 offensive tackles. One of their guards or centers is out. Grant Delpit, a great safety who was able to sign a contract extension before a groin injury. He went on IR. Denzel Ward's still questionable, their number 1 corner. That's a game that I think Chicago, the way their defense is played, especially since Montez Sweat has been there, they don't screw things up on offense. They run the ball well, and they get some great plays out of a mobile quarterback, which give the Browns defense a little bit of a fit. That's a game that they can win. If they get to 6-8, the last 3 games are home against Arizona, home against Atlanta, at Green Bay. They're a team that if they lose this weekend, it's basically over. But, they could make some noise too, and it's not like you have to be over 500 to make the playoffs this year in the NFC potentially. And then the New York Giants going from 2-8 and trading away Leonard Williams for 2nd-round pick to who was it? To now 5-8, 3 straight wins. Tommy DeVito, the hero on Monday Night Football with his agent Sean Stellato.
I don't think they, because it's like a 2%. If they could make it to the playoffs somehow, what a story for Tommy DeVito.
Yeah. And then one other team, Seattle is kind of falling apart, but they can change things if they beat a somewhat reeling Philly team on Monday night. Devin Witherspoon's banged up at corner. Can Geno Smith play? They were 6-3 at one point. You're thinking, man, they get Leonard Williams, and you're thinking, man, they have a chance at that, NFC West spot. And that went away, very, very quickly. So now they're just battling for their playoff lives. And Geno's had his moments, especially against the Dallas defense, but sometimes feels like this year it's kind of 1 year wonder from last year. But maybe Pete Carroll can put together. Were there any final thoughts on those few teams you were thinking about?
I agree with you about the Chicago, and we're talking about how I don't think it will happen. How good it would be if the Giants can make it. I think Seattle's season, I think, might depend on Monday's game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because the one good thing for them is they are playing in Seattle.
Yeah. And it gets very windy and very rainy and very cold up there, so it makes for an interesting environment.
And then the last thing I'll say before we get going is the one thing that helps the Bills out, I think, tomorrow is it's going to be a cold, rainy day.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, and you're playing in Buffalo, so that's going to be pretty good. And the Colts just scored a touchdown.
Yep, I'm just watching that. Yep.
So 6 points. So give me some very big nail-biting moments coming up.
Yep. And all these games are, at the beginning of the year thinking this quarterback's going to play this quarterback. It's going to be interesting. It's nobody what you're thinking, but in terms of who's playing at quarterback, but it's still very entertaining and coming down to the wire. So, this has been a great episode. This has been Football Update with Andy and Robin. This is Robin.
It's Andy.
And you guys have a great one.